From baptizing a banned Muslim drink to make it Christian, to endorsing a wine spiked with cocaine, to building an entire vineyard just to keep the papal cellar stocked, this is every pope's favorite drink. And some of these habits didn't just satisfy a craving, they quietly reshaped what half the world drinks today. Let's start with Pope Gregory the Great, whose relationship with drink was less about enjoying it and more about controlling everyone else's. Around 590 AD, Gregory issued strict dietary rules for monks across the Christian world, limiting wine to a modest daily ration and treating excess drinking as a spiritual failing. He wasn't exactly fun at parties, but his rules shaped monastic drinking culture, including the very monasteries that would later become famous for brewing beer for centuries afterward. Speaking of monasteries, Pope John XXII took the opposite approach entirely. Ruling from the papal court in Avignon in the 1300s, John was obsessed with fine Burgundy wine and reportedly had extensive vineyards planted specifically to keep the papal cellars stocked with quality bottles, going so far as to import specific rootstock he preferred, rather than settling for whatever the local Avignon soil happened to produce. His successor, Pope Benedict XII, expanded on that obsession even further, commissioning a proper summer residence surrounded by vineyards just outside Avignon, complete with its own wine press and cellars built directly into the papal grounds. That estate eventually became one of the most famous wine regions in the world, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which literally translates to the Pope's new castle. Every bottle of that wine sold today, and it's not cheap, still carries the name of a papal drinking habit from 700 years ago. Not long after, Pope Clement VI turned Avignon's papal court into one of the most lavish drinking scenes in Europe. His banquets were famous for excess, and his household reportedly went through staggering quantities of wine to keep guests and cardinals entertained during a papacy already known for luxury, far beyond what most popes before him had allowed themselves. Over a century later, Pope Innocent VIII had already set the tone for Borgia-era excess, chronically ill for much of his papacy. Innocent reportedly relied on wine as both refreshment and medicine, while his court became known for banquets so lavish that critics accused him of running the Vatican more like an Italian noble house than a spiritual institution, complete with his own illegitimate children openly attending papal feasts. Then came Pope Alexander VI, whose relationship with wine got a much darker reputation. The Borgia family Alexander belonged to was widely rumored to poison rivals using specially prepared wine, supposedly using a substance called cantarella slipped into a guest's cup at Vatican banquets. Whether the poisoning rumors were entirely true or partly exaggerated by Borgia enemies, Alexander's court became infamous for wine-soaked feasts where you genuinely had to watch which glass was yours. His successor's successor, Pope Julius II, kept the drinking reputation going, just with less poison and more war. Julius was known for personally leading military campaigns while maintaining a papal court famous for heavy wine consumption at its banquets, fueling a fiery temperament that had him literally leading troops into battle in full armor at times, earning him the nickname the Warrior Pope, a reputation his enemies joked was fueled as much by the bottle as by ambition. Not to be outdone, Pope Leo X threw some of the most extravagant parties the Vatican had ever seen, with wine flowing so freely at his banquets that guests reportedly lost count of the courses, and historians point to his spending on food, drink, and entertainment as one of the major reasons the Vatican's finances collapsed during his reign. A financial crisis that partly fueled the sale of indulgences that triggered Martin Luther's Protestant Reformation just a few years later. A few decades after that, Pope Paul III presided over the Council of Trent, while still maintaining a papal court known for elaborate banquets and a well-stocked cellar of fine wines from across Italy, reportedly employing a personal food and wine taster to guard against the same poisoning fears that had haunted the Borgias decades earlier, complete with a designated cupbearer whose entire job was tasting the Pope's wine before he did. It says a lot about how seriously Renaissance popes took their drinks and their enemies. After decades of that kind of excess, Pope Pius V yanked the papal court back the other direction entirely. Famously austere, Pius drank sparingly, favored simple diluted wine over the rich vintages his predecessors indulged in, and treated the Vatican's culture of banquets and drinking as exactly the kind of corruption the Counter-Reformation needed to clean up. That reforming streak didn't stop new drinks from finding their way to Rome. By the late 1500s, coffee had spread across the Ottoman Empire and into Europe, and it landed with a controversy. Some church advisors argued the drink was inherently sinful, calling it a bitter invention of Muslims and pushing to ban it outright for Christians. According to the popular legend, Pope Clement VIII decided to try it himself before making any ruling. He liked it, around 1600, rather than banning the drink. Clement reportedly declared that it would be a shame to let Muslims have exclusive claim to something so delicious, and jokingly baptized coffee as an acceptable Christian beverage, clearing the way for coffee houses to spread across Catholic Europe over the following century. A little over a century later, one particular papal taste test became legendary among Bavarian monks, even though nobody agrees which pope was actually involved. According to brewery lore, Paulaner monks in Munich brewed an extra strong, calorie-dense beer to sustain themselves through the strict fasting rules of Lent, nicknaming it liquid bread since solid food was largely off the table. Worried the strong brew might technically break their fast, the monks sent a barrel all the way to Rome to get papal approval that it didn't violate the rules. The problem was the journey. By the time the beer survived weeks crossing the Alps in summer heat, sloshing around in a wooden barrel with no refrigeration, it had gone completely sour, flat, and genuinely unpleasant. The Pope, tasting the ruined batch, reportedly grimaced through it and declared it a fitting penance for the monks to keep drinking as part of their fast, and approved it, never realizing the same beer waiting back in the cool Munich cellars actually tasted rich and excellent. The monks, thrilled with the ruling, kept brewing it exactly as before, and that same style of strong Lenten beer, Doppelbock, is still made in Bavaria today. A few decades after Clement's coffee ruling, Pope Urban VIII kept the Vatican's reputation for indulgence alive in a different way, funding extravagant artistic projects across Rome while maintaining a papal court known for elaborate feasts and fine wine, all while the papal treasury quietly drained to pay for both the art and the appetite of the men enjoying it. That reforming streak got tested again 2 centuries later by Pope Pius IX, who holds the record for the longest verified papacy in history at nearly 32 years. Pius reportedly relied on strong Italian coffee to get through the demands of the job, particularly during the political turmoil of 1848 when he was forced to flee Rome in disguise. And Vatican accounts from the era describe coffee, not wine, as his genuine daily necessity rather than an indulgence. Centuries later, Pope Leo XIII's favorite drink became one of the strangest product endorsements in papal history. In the late 1800s, Leo was a regular consumer of Vin Mariani, a popular French tonic wine infused with coca leaf extract. Essentially a mild cocaine laced Bordeaux marketed as a health tonic for exhaustion and nerves. Leo reportedly carried a personal flask of it, appeared on a promotional poster for the product alongside testimonials from other famous public figures of the era, and even awarded the tonic's creator, Angelo Mariani, a Vatican gold medal in gratitude, making him possibly the only pope in history to publicly endorse a drink containing cocaine. Not long after, Pope Pius XI kept things comparatively modest, reportedly preferring simple Italian table wine at meals and showing little interest in the elaborate tastes of earlier centuries, a fitting habit for a pope more focused on negotiating Vatican City's independence from Mussolini's Italy than on stocking an impressive cellar. By the 20th century, Pope Pius XII went in the completely opposite direction. Famously ascetic and disciplined, Pius reportedly stuck to water and the smallest ceremonial amounts of wine required for Mass, treating even modest indulgence as something to be avoided during a papacy defined by wartime austerity. His successor, Pope John XXIII, brought the joy back to the papal table. Known for his warmth, humor, and hearty appetite, John XXIII embraced traditional Italian wine culture and was famously more relaxed about food and drink than his ascetic predecessor, reportedly enjoying a glass of wine with dinner as a simple, ordinary pleasure rather than treating it as something to hide or apologize for. Once, when asked how many people worked in the Vatican, he reportedly joked that about half of them did, the same easygoing humor that made him beloved and that carried straight over into how he approached a good meal and a good glass of wine with visiting guests. Decades later, Pope John Paul II carried his Polish roots straight into the Vatican's dining habits, maintaining a fondness for Polish beer and wine from his homeland throughout his papacy, and reportedly enjoying a casual drink with visitors as a way of putting them at ease, a habit that became part of his famously approachable public image. Whether he was sharing a toast with world leaders or clinking glasses with pilgrims during his travels to over 100 countries, his successor, Pope Benedict XVI, brought Bavaria with him instead. German by birth and famously fond of his home region's brewing tradition, Benedict was widely reported to enjoy a glass of Bavarian wheat beer with meals. And Vatican kitchen staff reportedly kept it specially imported and stocked specifically for him throughout his papacy, a small taste of home for a pope who reportedly found the Italian wine-heavy Vatican dining culture less to his liking than the beer halls of his native Bavaria. And finally, Pope Francis skipped the wine cellar entirely in favor of something much closer to home. As an Argentine, Francis has long favored yerba mate, the traditional South American herbal tea sipped through a metal straw called a bombilla from a shared gourd, a drink so central to his identity growing up in Buenos Aires that Argentine visitors to the Vatican have brought him mate sets as gifts, and photographs of Francis sharing mate with guests have become a small, recognizable signature of his papacy, keeping a nearly 2,000-year tradition of papal drink preferences alive with something that isn't wine, beer, or coffee at all. So there you have it, every pope's favorite drink, from a coca-laced tonic wine to a vineyard that became one of the world's most famous wine regions to a barrel of ruined beer that accidentally launched a Bavarian brewing tradition to a simple gourd of South American tea. These choices weren't just personal habits. They left fingerprints on wine regions, drinking cultures, coffee houses, breweries, and even a Reformation that changed Christianity forever. Turns out, the most powerful man in the Catholic Church has always had one very human weakness in common with everybody else: a favorite drink he couldn't quite give up. If you want to see every pope's darkest day instead, click right here and keep watching.